Engaging Trees speaker series, the first program out of 3 that we're going to be having this fall, and we're really pleased to be here. This came about as a kind of a collaboration between a number of botanical gardens and nature preserves and historical societies throughout South King County. For Engaging Trees, they wanted to talk more about seeing the development pressures that have been happening throughout South King County. Those folks really felt that it was important to talk about the cultural value of trees. We all know there's environmental importance, but also about the cultural value and what it is we're missing if we aren't thoughtful about how we continue to develop South King County. And I thought what we'd do is just go from person to person here. I invited each of these people for a special reason because they have a special connection to trees. So we're going to start with Ken Workman. And Ken, the reason I talked to Ken is, he and I are baby boomers. We grew up, about the same time. Had a typical baby boomer childhood, right? Went to school, played with our siblings, roamed the woods because at that point there were woods growing up in this area. And then about midlife, if I've gotten this right, that he came from some interesting ancestry. He is the descendant, the great, 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 great grandson of Chief Seattle. So, Ken?
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about what you've learned about, now that you know that about yourself, your connection to trees.
Sure. So this discovery, as Barbara said, came late in life. I've always been a Duwamish person. I never knew anything other than that. Born and raised in West Seattle on the banks of the Duwamish River. Pop had his boat in there. We had dinghies. So all of my heritage, all of my imprinting is on the shores of Alki and the Duwamish River. So when I was working over here at the Boeing company, a friend of mine, and I finally got a family tree, first time in 55 years. A friend of mine said, "Let me see that." And so he went online and he started pulling up all of these records out of the Mormon files. And right at the top of it was this very strange name. And so that name was Hokosted. And tracking it back into the Duwamish tribe, I just called them up and said, I am Workman, and I'm interested in joining the tribe. And they said, "Well, who are you?" So I went up to my great-grandma, and then they said, "Stop, papers in the mail." And so by way of formal introduction, I would be Yayustobs. So Yayustobs teach da at the Duwams. It simply means I am Workman of the Duwamish tribe. And so then we always go through our family, our mother, our father, our grandmother, our grandfather, until we see heads nod, and people go, "Oh, now I know who you are." And so I just cut to the chase, and I go, "Akwiye, Akwiye, Siab Sialcha." And great-great-great-great-grandson of Chief Seattle I. And so all of these trees that are in this area around here are important to us. Because since the ice went away, we're talking about the Ice Age. We have stories about this. We have been living and dying on these 7 hills of Seattle. This right here would be a little bit too far south. We'd run into the Puyallups right over here. So we were up there. And so for those 10, 12, 14,000 years, our DNA has been going down into the ground. And all of that time, every spring, anybody that grew up in the Northwest knows everything that's in the ground goes back up into the trees. And so that would fulfill my grandfather's statement where he said the dead aren't entirely powerless. Of course they're not. They're in the trees. And they're working by giving us the oxygen that we breathe. And the houses that we're in, just like this house right here. Grandma and Grandpa is in the very wood. Our DNA is in the wood. And so when I walked into this building, I had a big grin on my face because I recognized this is an old building. And there's some old timbers in here. And so the people that were here, long before Seattle became a city or Olympia or the Puget Sound, the native people have been living. And so it's always with a warm heart that I come to places like this and say, "Oh, it's good to see you, Grandma and Grandpa." For us it would be, Simply means thank you, Grandma and Grandpa, for your big work. So, am I supposed to introduce who I am as far as business and all that?
Oh, if you want, you've got like a minute left.
Okay. So I'm retired out of Boeing Flight Operations Engineering. When I was in tool engineering at Boeing, I worked up in Everett. Flight ops was right down here in Tukwila, so I was right on my native ground. I retired out of the Duwamish tribe as a council member and retired out of the Duwamish tribe as a president of our nonprofit. So I certainly recognize the struggles of a nonprofit. And so I would have to say, Escudita Chitkaya Yasabat, Tuadagwi, oh, the Siaya, Tuadagwi, Ibashadafate, Heisha Lok Ok Atuf Aslach. Simply means thank you, my friends, for your journey into this big house here today. Thank you.
Next, we're going to travel forward a little bit more in history, but about 100 years ago. And Rose Clark is here this evening. She'll be talking to us about Des Moines Memorial Drive. You may recognize Rose. She is a longtime city council member, deputy mayor of the city of Burien. And for those of us who went to Tyee, she worked at Tyee High School for a number of years. And she's been one of the mainstays behind making sure that Des Moines Memorial Drive isn't forgotten. Rose.
I am the president of the Des Moines Memorial Drive Preservation Association. I'm going to run through the history real quick and then I'm going to tie it into trees. So if we can move to the next. This is our mission, to honor those who died in World War I by advocating for the preservation and maintenance of Des Moines Memorial Drive as a unique living historical monument through educational, cultural, civic, and fundraising activities. And so a quick history. There were a series of farm roads here. Sunnydale was where it began, and it was settled in the middle 1800s. And eventually these roads were put together, and they went from South Park to the marina down here. And in 1910, as Jim said, they were bricked with red brick at a cost of $375,000 for the whole length. And yes, the bricks are still there, and a dump load truck of them is in my backyard, hoping for future use. So in 1921, the war had ended. And all across the nation, it started in Nebraska, people were saying, we have to do something to remember these brave people who died so that we can have the freedom to enjoy things like we're doing tonight. And so the Seattle Garden Club got a charter from the King County Council to establish what was then called Highway 14 as the living road of remembrance for this area. And it was planted with something close to 1,700 elm trees. It grew up nice and branched over the road, making a beautiful canopy, some of you guys may remember. And they grew so big and tall, the power company said, oh my gosh, they're growing up into the power lines. We're having such troubles. King County, can we please cut some of them down? And so they had to work with a local fellow called Judd Colburn. Some of you may remember, he was called the keeper of the trees. And eventually, in the 1960s, they began cutting the trees down from South Park to 128. They never got any further than that because the community was not a very happy community. In place of all of those trees, they planted they built a granite monument at Sunnydale Elementary, which has problems today because it's got Spanish-American War. It's got a lot of people that are not World War I on it, and that's a different story. And so in 2000, when I went on Burien City Council, I worked to get an interlocal agreement among all the cities in Highline plus the county so we could restore the road. So that the agreement calls for when a jurisdiction has a project on the drive, they need to plant elm trees as part of that work. And sporadically, if you drive the drive today, you will see new trees planted. And in 2002, Susan Black and Associates worked with us and created a plan that's in a notebook about like this that all the cities have to help guide work along the drive. And then in 2012, we formed the nonprofit that is still working today. And this is a map. You see the black line? It's the route of Des Moines Memorial Drive. It goes through King County. It gets kind of iffy when you're driving south of 128 because one side will be Burien, one side will be SeaTac. You get a little further south and it's all Burien. You get a little further south and it's Des Moines and Burien. And then it's all Des Moines. And so we are still working with educational programs. We have events several times during the year to try to educate people about, you can go to the next one, to try to educate people about the war and the establishment of the drive. This is Splendors Field, a poem that was written by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae about living and dying in that terrible war. That is on the back of the pamphlet that I put on the back of the table also. And I encourage you all to read it because it just really hurts to read that. Read one more. And so these are the days that we have our ceremonies. Memorial Day always at 8:30. Veterans Day this year is going to be around 10:30 because we want to end close to 11 so we can ring the bells at 11 because the war ended on November 11th at 11. And then we're working to have a big celebration in 2021, which would be the 100th anniversary of the establishment of the drive. So I said I would tie this all into trees. And I loved hearing what you said about trees. I hadn't thought of it quite like that, but for me, trees are a wonderful heritage, but they're also, when you go to the cemetery to see your mom or dad, your grandparents, or whoever, you usually take flowers as a remembrance and a thank you for all that they did for you on a personal level. To me, the trees along Des Moines Memorial Drive did that. Originally, each one of those trees had a number on it, and the number related to the name of an individual that was on a great big list. And so that part has been lost. But still the trees say, these people died so that we can be free, so that we can do whatever we feel is good to do within the law. And we honor them, we remember them. For many years, World War I has been considered the forgotten war. And that's largely because across our country, all of the living roads of remembrances that began are gone. Ours is the only one left. There are few memorials to World War I. And I am very proud that ours remains a little worse for wear, but it's still there. And again, the trees that we are trying to put back expresses gratitude to all of those folks who died for us. So that's why it's so important to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So next, I'd like to introduce Linda McClamrock. She is, Linda and I went to school together, went through Chinook, went through Tyee, and we use trees in an interesting way. We both play string instruments, and to this day we continue to play in the same string quartet. So, so that's a different way of using trees. But Linda, just a few years back, discovered that she's an excellent musician on a number of instruments. But she also discovered that she had another talent, and that is as a collage artist. And she's been doing really phenomenal work over the last maybe just 5 or 6 years. Her work is in several collections throughout the Puget Sound region, and her work is in great demand. So, Linda, I'm going to let you take it away and talk about why trees are important to you. And Stuart, I think she's got her
Oh, yes, I have a few pieces, so thank you. I feel honored to be in this illustrious company up here. I am but a humble artist. And
That's not your art.
no, but it's very interesting. I like how it's arranged.
Did I get one from you?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. I gave you the little blue.
Oh, that one has that. Okay.
Okay, we got it.
I got that
Pull
one.
it out.
It's right here.
Oh, he's good.
He is good.
My apologies.
And there will be 4 that say Linda.
I've been juggling 4 flash drives of yours.
Yeah, he's been Stuart. Such a favorite.
Okay, here we go.
Yes.
These
That's
are the
a
ones?
good one?
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Let's start with that one.
Let's do that.
So, collage is not something that's widely understood, so I wanted to at least be able to see a couple to understand what I'm doing. But after deciding that I wanted to try collage, and it has only been 5 or 6 years since I started working with collage, I'm self-taught, and I had no idea what I was doing. And a girlfriend of mine who is a very fine painter, I told her, I said, that collage stuff, that looks really interesting. I'd like to try that. And so she put together a box for me that had paint and paintbrushes and cardboard and stamps and stamp pads and little bits of paper and glitter and who knows what all was in there. And she said, here, go have fun. And I did. And I just quickly got really hooked on the whole idea of expressing myself visually. And as I've gone, I use a lot of natural things in my work because I love art, the beauty of our natural world, and I love reflecting that in art. And so I've done various things. I've done birds and flowers and trees and people and whatnot, but the trees just seem to really resonate with people in a different way than everything else. As part of my art, I like to include, in most pieces, have not just text as you can see on the trees there, but they also have words that you're supposed to read. Like this one says, every tree has a story.
Every tree
Has a story. Every tree has a story. And they do. And let's show the next one. Could we the, whatever the next one is. Here we go. Douglas fir, this is my depiction of Douglas fir, whether you recognize that or not, which are my favorite trees, and I think they should be our state tree, but that's neither here nor there. But so here, again, I'm using text, and then at the very top, I think it says that the trees are an impeccable witness. And I just put words on that, come to me, these little snippets of things that mean something to me. And what I have found is that people respond to those. We recognize somehow, within us just as human beings, that trees, they give us context as people. They are the largest thing in the plant world. So they are, the king of the plant world, so to speak. And their very size and their age give us context as people, as where we fit in all of this. People love the idea that trees have a secret life, and I really believe that they do. There are things happening there that we can't see, and we don't know, and we don't understand. But the idea that the trees, that there's more than what you see is going on, is something that touches people's souls very deeply inside, and people respond to that. And let's see, I think I have another one, right? Is there?
There should be 2.
Oh, yes. And I'm sorry, I didn't even get to crop this one. But it says, this one basically is saying that unlike human beings, that our trees, that they don't respond to age the same way that we do. That they actually, they don't worry about increasing years, but they respond with songs of dignity and thankfulness. And so it's things like this that people have really responded to, and I have really enjoyed doing. And so I love making art about trees, and despite the fact that they're not always realistic, they are my depiction of trees. And and I have really enjoyed doing it, and I have been entranced by the response of people to what I'm doing. This one says, after a snowfall, the trees link arms and dance. The trees link, after a snowfall, the trees link arms and dance.
Oh.
And I believe they do.
Part of the Port of Seattle's initiative to address our community's concerns about loss of trees is to bring Forterra in to consult with the cities and to measure tree canopy. Joanna, take it away.
This is really cool to hear these different perspectives and about how trees have played such an important role in history. And so many of you I heard have connections to the land right here. And you probably all have a story about a tree in your life or more. Real quick, so my name is Joanna. I work at a nonprofit called Forterra, formerly Cascade Land Conservancy many years ago, so it's all kind of the same bundle of work. We've been around for nearly 30 years. We do a lot of different types of conservation work, but in summary, our work is about securing, caring for the places that make our region sustainable and a special place to live. So with that, we're working to conserve 1.6, we have a lofty goal of 1.6 million acres to conserve in our region of farms, wilderness, parkland. We also want to have vibrant, affordable cities, places where people can live and have a good quality of life. And also ensure that the public is activated and engaged in this work. So, well, this is just one sliver of what Forterra does. It's my favorite and what I'm here to talk to you about, which is our Green Cities program. And the Green City Partnerships, we have programs in 12 different cities right now, and the program continues to grow. Most recently, as Barbara was referring to, we've begun work in Sept, Burien, and Des Moines. But you can see this is part of a larger regional effort. All these cities have committed and are dedicated to restoring their forested parks, natural areas, and urban forests, recognizing that it is essential as we grow to continue to have this history and connection with nature, and to continue to plant trees. Obviously, we're not, generations have been planting trees as far as we can remember. And so what we want to ensure is that these places are maintained and accessible to everyone. So to date, these cities combined serve a little bit over 1.5 million people as the core, of the Puget Sound region. Together, it's closer, once we bring Sept, Burien, and Des Moines on board, it'll be closer to about 10,000 acres of forested park and natural area in all of those cities. Roughly about 2,000, a little over 2,000, have gone through a process of restoration. And we've had and these are partnerships and programs that combine a lot of different organizations, have more than 1.3 million hours of volunteer time have gone to these programs. And we're expected to grow. We have 2 more. Shoreline is expected to come on and another potentially next year. So the neat thing about this is if we just worked in one city, if just in Des Moines everybody came together and said, we're going to make sure we restore our parks and our natural areas and our urban forests, our neighborhood with trees, well, that would be fabulous. But if the neighbors next to you, just like your property, are not doing the same kind of work, you're always going to be battling. And I'll tell you a little bit about why this work is important and what some of the issues are with our urban forests. So, next slide. So the goal of all of these programs is to improve the overall health of our forests within the trees within our cities. Make sure we do this while we engage and have community involved in this process. And also make sure that this is sustainable. Has anybody pulled blackberry or ivy? Mm-hmm. What we want to make sure is that we don't put this big effort into restoration and say, we're done, give a high five and walk away, because we know that ongoing stewardship is necessary in order to protect this for the future. So, when we zoom out, This is Burien. You can see from, far away, from afar, it looks like we have, a fair bit of, quite a few trees. But if we zoom in, and these trees, as others have mentioned and we'll probably talk about, provide an enormous amount of benefits to our communities, in particular in an urban environment. Of course, cleaning our air and our water. There's also lots of really great research going on about just the physical and mental health benefits to connecting with nature and having a tree just outside your window. There's statistics that children learn better, score higher in schools that have views of trees. And so there's all this great research out there. We could spend hours just talking about that. But there's no denying that we need these trees in our lives in order to thrive. But if we zoom in a little bit closer, I don't know if anybody's ever seen this before. This is, the dreaded English ivy that if we sort of turned our backs and let it go, would actually take over all of our natural areas. Even these little places we just drive by, we see trees. They look green and everything looks great, but if you look a little closer, often there's this issue with invasive plants. But we do know that there's work probably happening right now, and we want to build upon that to reverse that trend. And so removing the invasive plants, planting the next generation of tree. This is that same site, probably about 4 or 5 years later. And we hope that into the future, as we're sort of creating our own history, I really hope that people will come together hundreds of years from now and be like, there was these great people that planted these trees and our forest was all about to die. So next slide. What we're hoping is, planting the next future healthy forest. And there's no reason why we can't have that in our backyards in a city, even with all this growth. So as I mentioned, it's a community-based stewardship program. And connected to that, so it's rooted in the community. It brings people together. It's a partnership. So it would bring cities, clubs, organizations, schools, businesses, other nonprofits, really all under the same umbrella to say, okay, this is what we want for our city. We want to come together and ensure that we have a healthy tree canopy. So that means a lot of work, sweat, all ages, young and old, and working together. And so much more than just getting the work done, it's also about connecting with the land, which we don't always have time and take the time to do. So we're in the process, as Barbara mentioned, this is funded, the startup of a Green Des Moines, Green CTEC, and Green Burien partnership. We're doing it all at once. We've never done 3 cities all together at the same time. The port decided they wanted to invest in both community-based projects like the grant program, but also a program that would hopefully carry on into the future. And so this is a 3-year investment to get, we're doing a canopy cover assessment. We have the results of that, so we know roughly what the canopy cover percentage is in all of the cities. We're also looking at a forest health assessment in all of the parks happening this month. And that's also, we can have the information so we can understand what's going on and where are there disparities, where are there opportunities. And we also want your input. So this is my plug. We're going to have a series of open houses. I have a flyer. There's one in each city. So in Des Moines, we're just putting together some of the details. So the date is likely going to be mid-October, but that's still pending. It will be at Des Moines Beach Park. But you can pick up one of these flyers. You can really attend any of the ones if the one for your city is not, the date doesn't work. And then there'll be also a public survey. And then starting next year, we'll actually have on-the-ground projects where people can bring out their families, get involved, and whether it's in your local park or even we're looking for opportunities to increase trees in neighborhoods and school grounds and that sort of thing as well. So that's a program in a nutshell.
That's great, yeah.
And again, I hope this is just building off of the continuing the history of stewardship that has been so important that leaves us with what we have now and ensuring that we still have it in the future.
in pursuing this, I went and talked about the Engaging Trees initiative to the Wells classes the other day. Wells is what we used to call, Waskowitz, Camp Waskowitz, for all of the people who grew up in this area. Every sixth grader in the Highline School District to this day goes off to Camp Waskowitz for a week to have environmental education. And back in our day, we were given a little seedling to take home and plant in the yard, and some of you still know where your tree is. That's pretty cool. But in addition to that now, the school district has designed a high school program for kids who it's an alternative school to sitting in a big school and taking classes that don't make a lot of sense to them. And I have seen the Wells program is for Waskowitz Environmental Leadership and Service, I think is what it stands for. I've seen those kids go in there, and I saw them at the beginning of the year this week, and they were kind of like this, by the end of the year, by the end of the school year, they come up, they shake your hand, they look you in the eye, they can tell you all sorts of stuff about trees and the environment. So it's a fantastic program. Where am I going with this? Oh, well, so I thought we could just spend a little bit of time, audience panel, talking about connections to why you might feel a particular connection to a particular tree. I can tell you my parents planted a Barbara tree when I was born and a Leslie tree when my sister was born. And they're big trees now. You're getting old when a bald eagle comes and lands in the Barbara tree. So they only like mature trees. So anyway, I will say, if you're very good, I might read a little bit out of this book to you. It was very influential, obviously, in my childhood. A tree is nice. But I'd like to hear from some of the rest of you, panel members or anybody out in the audience, if you want to share a quick story about a tree that is very meaningful to you. Yeah, Mark.
So
stand up.
I went to Camp Waskowitz, and I had a seedling that I brought home, and we planted it in my front yard. And I grew up just north of the airport, and the house that I grew up in got moved out, and where that house was is now part of North SeaTac Park. But the tree is still there. And when my mother passed away several years ago, we put her ashes, she had said she wanted her ashes at the base of that tree. And so I think that was, that's sort of this is my roots,
It's sacred ground.
Yeah. So.
Well, and Barbara, you probably can explain more about the specifics, the four-culture connection that we have as a project with our Save Weyerhaeuser campus effort to save and preserve the character of the corporate park, 400 acres that was sold to a California developer, which were in opposition to the 5 warehouses that are developed. But Barbara arranged for Catherine, who has identified through GPS, which is available on a website.
We'll talk about it in a minute.
Okay, all right. To identify some of the most significant trees that are really in jeopardy for the development of these 5 warehouses. The 5 warehouses will remove about 40,000 trees and those are significant trees by Federal Way code definition of 8 inches in diameter and greater. So we have identified a dozen or more trees on that GPS system that you can go and look at, and we've written some little descriptive material about them and some of the cedars, the significance, for example, of cedars to the tribes, and there's some magnificent trees. A lot of this land that's in this Weyerhaeuser property, about 2/3 of it is trees, forests, is the residual from logging in the early 1900s. And so some trees were left. There wasn't any planting done in those years, and so some of those little trees that were left might have been decades old, and now they're huge, huge trees. So our effort is Save Weyerhaeuser Campus, and I'm happy to say the legislature has supported us through the help of Forterra also, and Forterra is trying to put a deal together between the city and the current owner, whose plans are these 5 warehouses and eliminating all these trees. You can find more about us. I've got a few flyers. You can go on Facebook or whatever, some of these Instagram, all these social media sites, or just go to the web, the World Wide Web, to Save Weyerhaeuser Campus, and you can find a lot more information about our efforts. And, we're your neighbors here in Des Moines. We're just the next town to the south, and we view this property. It's also where the Rhododendron Species Garden and the Bonsai Museum is located. Those facilities are in some jeopardy relative to the new ownership of this property. They're on leases, but their leases do expire. The terms of their renewal is uncertain. So, Save Weyerhaeuser Campus.
My name is Tim. I'm with the Historical Society of Federal Way, and we are very involved in that process, mainly because that whole side, that whole part of Federal Way is where Federal Way started. The Spring Valley and the area. A lot of that is man-made ponds and stuff, but that was part of the history of Federal Way. And you also have, at the Weyerhaeuser campus, you have a lot of wildlife that relies on those trees. I've seen deer there, there's owls there. It would be a huge loss, not just to us because of the trees, but to everything else, because nature needs somewhere to go. And right now, that's where it is. So.
As a matter of fact, I'll chime in and say that now it's probably 10 years ago now, but maybe some of you remember the news story about the bear that swam over from Vashon, and and they were kind of tracking, where is the next bear sighting, and I think they ended up finding it on the Weyerhaeuser campus. It had taken refuge there, and they finally were able to take it out, up to the Cascades or something. But truly, you're right. The animals go where they can go. So I think we've already moved on a little bit to a discussion of advocacy, and I know we're running out of time, but let me just back up a little bit and say that if you have a special tree, what Dick was referencing is that SoCo Culture has put on its website a story map for trees. And these are trees that are important to you for whatever reason. It can be, a tree your grandpa planted. It can be a tree that you just like. As a matter of fact, I put, and occasionally it can be a tree that is no longer there and that you lament. I put up a green and enduring grove. It's something where you can upload a photo, and if you old timers are like me and kind of scared about that, find a young person and haul them with you to a tree that you feel strongly about, make them take a picture, and they can upload it very easily in the snap of a finger. But I had gone down to Kent. That's this grove that I drive past every day, right there on Meeker Street, and it used to be a big cornfield, and everybody got their corn at the stand there. And off in one corner was this big grove of trees. I imagine it originally was going around the farmhouse. Farmhouse is long gone. So I thought, this is a map that we just put up on our website in the last couple of months. So earlier this summer, I took a picture of that grove of trees because it shades the intersection. And when the sun's beating down and you're waiting at the red light, it's this green and calming intersection. And I took a picture and I uploaded it, and you can see the picture of it on the website today if you go to sococulture.org, and on the home page there's a banner, and over on the right hand side there's something that says trees, and you just click on trees, and that will take you to all of these stories about trees that are important to people. So 2 weeks after I took that picture, I'm driving down the road on Meeker Street going into Canada, and what do I see? Nothing. The grove is gone because they're developing it. Now, okay, you know, I understand we do need housing. I'm not opposed to that. You know, I don't want people to be, you know, stuck on the streets. This was a, you know, a residential high-density development that was going in. But in that corner, I looked at the you know, the architect's rendering, what they planned for that corner. Guess what they're going to put in that corner where they took out the green grove? A park! I mean, it's just astonishing to me. So I guess what I am, I think all of us can agree on is that, yes, there's going to be development. Some of that's going to be inevitable. But that it be thoughtful. And that in that development, that we really work at making sure that trees have a voice, since they can sue and sigh in the wind, but you know, we're the ones who have to speak up for them. And that means at our city council meetings and at our school board meetings when they're building a new school, and at to our legislatures, they are the green lungs of our community. I didn't intend to get on my soapbox so much, but I really encourage everybody to be brave about this. And I can tell you, I've been chased out of a city council meeting when I was introducing our map of culturally significant trees that anybody can add to anywhere in the world. Just put up a photo and talk about the tree that's important to you. This fellow chased me out of the city council meeting last week and said, oh, you're going about it all wrong. We don't want more regulations. And I said, well, actually, this isn't a regulation. It's just putting up a tree. They said, it's still all wrong. So there will be some resistance, but I look at this gathering tonight, and I think it is our opportunity to speak up for trees, to pass our love of trees along to our younger generations, and really to make sure that this doesn't go unchecked.
As well as being president of our Des Moines Historic Society, I'm also president of our Hill Grove Pioneer Cemetery on 200th Street. And any of you who aren't familiar with it, as you're heading from Des Moines way east toward the new park and ride for the light rail, it's just at the crest of the hill before you start down the hill toward the street that goes toward the jail down there. And in our cemetery, we have a number of memorial trees, conifers, that are quite tall. And the Port of Seattle is after us to want to cut them down. And they're memorial trees to people who are buried in our cemetery. And that is unacceptable to me, totally unacceptable. In addition to that, across the street, the Port owns property across the street, they have trees equally tall that they haven't touched. So that is a big concern to me. But I can't emphasize enough what you've heard this evening. And one thing that you can do, as has just been suggested by Barbara, is call the school board of directors for the Highline School District, call the members of the city council for those of us who are in Des Moines, and those of us who are around the area, or city councils, because all you have to do is look at where the Des Moines Elementary School is going to be. I'm sorry, the school district are hypocrites. The clear cutting that was done there is not acceptable. They knew where those buildings are that they're going to be building. There's not a single blade of grass or a tree left in that site up on the corner of 240th and 16th. That is not acceptable. In addition to that, those of you who've driven on 24th recently, over again toward the new light rail station, look at that sea of cement where not a single tree was left. All of us who've lived for a while well remember when that whole area had houses in it. Houses, individual houses. Port of Seattle bought the property. But here again, the city of Des Moines is responsible for that. They allowed denuding. There isn't a single tree there. I call it the raping of the land, because that's what they're doing. And this is not the 1950s when tree cutting is acceptable at all. So get a hold of your city council, get a hold of your school board director. Say, are you going to explain what you did to that ground where the Des Moines Elementary is going to be, where there's not even a blade of grass left, let alone a tree?
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to piggyback on that a little bit. We're describing the sea of asphalt where there used to be houses. And before there used to be houses, there used to be villages. And before there used to be villages, there used to be just a little gathering. And the native people that were here are in the ground underneath those parking lots. They're underneath those foundation houses. And these big trees with their deep roots, they can still go down and they can still talk to those people that are in the ground for those 10, 12, 14,000 years. These exceptional trees are very important to us. And so I would offer, do as much as you can, as much work as you can to save these trees. Thank you.
My special trees were a whole little drive down into my house along a creek, a quarter of a mile. I live at Woodmont Beach. And they came in last year, the city, and took down 12 trees that were considered dangerous along that little road. And right this minute, they're taking down 44 more. It's just devastating. And then they have a plan for the third phase. And we went to all the meetings last year. We did everything we could. We wrote letters. I don't think it does any good to go to the
job. Now, I promised all of you I'm going to read you this book that was so influential in my life, and then it's time for cookies and conversation. So this is the first slide, and I guess you can't see all of it, but there's a little, in the picture, there's a little boy in the woods gazing up at the trees, and here's the story. This is A Tree is Nice by Janice May Udry, and the pictures are by Mark Simone. Trees are very nice. They fill up the sky. They go beside the rivers and down the valleys. They live up on the hills. Trees make the woods. They make everything beautiful. Even if you have just one tree, it is nice too. A tree is nice because it has leaves. The leaves whisper in the breeze all summer long. In the fall, the leaves come down and we play in them. We walk in the leaves and roll in the leaves. We build playhouses out of the leaves, and then we pile them up with our rakes and have a bonfire. A tree is nice because it has a trunk and limbs. We can climb the tree and see over all the yards. We can sit on a limb and think about things, or play pirate ship up in a tree. If it's an apple tree, we can climb it to pick the apples. Cats get away from dogs by going up the tree. Birds build nests in trees and live there. The sticks come off the trees too, and we can draw in the sand with sticks. A tree is nice to hang a swing in, or a basket of flowers. It's a good place to lean your hoe while you rest. A tree is nice because it makes shade. The cows lie down in the shade when it is hot. People have picnics there too, and the baby takes his nap in his buggy in the shade. A tree is nice for a house to be near. The tree shades the house and keeps it cool. The tree holds off the wind and keeps the wind from blowing the roof off sometimes. A tree is nice to plant. You dig the biggest hole you can and put the little tree in. Then you pour in lots of water and then the dirt. You hang the shovel back in the garage. Every day for years and years, you watch the little tree grow. You say to people, I planted that tree. They wish they had one, so they go home and plant a tree too. Thank you for coming tonight, everybody.